Hello, it's Lromanosky from Calgary, Canada. You can see the skyline in the background there. What we have here for sale in Calgary in September 2021 is this 1949 Jeepster, WILLYS Jeepster. So we'll do a walk around video of the car. You can see it's happily idling away here. We can go into a brief history of the car. I can go into the history of this particular example, and then we can do a walk around of the general condition of it. So this was not a commercial success in period. They didn't make the Jeepster for very long, I think only 3 or 4 years, and they didn't make that many of them, especially compared to the military style Jeeps. It was two-wheel drive, and it was expensive, I think, when people were after perhaps more basic transportation right after the war. So commercially it was a bit of a flop, but it's an interesting footnote in the Jeep history and in WILLYS history, I think, because this is one of the very first utility vehicles that was kind of made the transition to road use. So of course based on the World War II Jeeps, which shared the basic architecture of the car. But this one is quite, I would say, quite comfortable. I mean, maybe not by today's standards, but by the standards of the late 40s. I mean, this was a luxurious vehicle. I mean, it makes my early Land Rovers, which were introduced in the late 40s as well. This is a Cadillac compared to those. I mean, we've got door padding, we've got nicely padded upholstered seats, folding seats in the rear, we have carpet, and a nice top with a zip out rear window, with good quality fabric and so on. It's reasonably warm and dry in here. It has a good heater. It's quiet. There's no, the gearbox is quiet, the engine is quiet, it's smooth, it's way more refined than you'd expect a late 40s utility vehicle to be. It's actually pretty comfortable. So the immediate post-war period was really quite interesting for vehicle production, because the manufacturers, in World War II, of course, all occupied by making stuff for the military, including all their production and R&D and so forth. So when the war ended, the manufacturers that made planes like Spartan, there was no need for military aircraft anymore, and so they sort of went into the trailer business. Other firms were just looking for basic mobility. Germany was bombed flat, and there was all kinds of microcars that were basically motorcycle engine tiny cars like the Isetta and the Messerschmitt. In France, the tiny Citroën 2CV came out. Again, extremely rudimentary basic transportation. There was shortages of lots of raw materials, especially steel. There was a shortage of people. There was and the markets were pretty thin, and the manufacturers were really struggling to think, what could they bring to market easily, cheaply, using existing designs, using the materials that were available that they thought they could sell, to jumpstart civilian production. Okay, so that was the mentality in the late 40s, and all the manufacturers in Europe and in the US were in the same boat. So most of the designs in the late 40s are actually pre-war cars. So this, I think, is a significant car because, I mean, it's based on the World War II Jeep, but it has quite a luxurious body, surprisingly luxurious body. So if you just casually looked at a Jeepster, you might think that it's agricultural, that it's noisy, that it's uncomfortable, that it's really harshly sprung like a Jeep, but it isn't actually. It's the cabin is nicely finished, it's well muffled, It's quiet. The gearbox is quiet. It's a 3 on the tree, and we can see that linkage there, which is kind of a treat to drive if you haven't tried one. The car is running now, and it's barely any louder than a modern car. The engine's quiet. The gearbox is quiet. The suspension is compliant. You know, the seats are plush. You know, there's carpeting and a nicely upholstered roof. So this is, you know, by the standards of the day, almost a luxury car. And maybe that goes some way to explaining why it didn't sell very well. It's 2-wheel drive only, not 4-wheel drive. And it might have just been, and it was expensive, and it was just probably the wrong car at that time to sell. But what makes it interesting is this is kind of the, you know, one of the predecessors of the modern SUV, which is a utility vehicle, but one that is made comfortable for the road and with some luxury equipment in it. So from 1949, I can't think of anything else that would have this much refinement and luxury in a utility style body. I mean, the Land Rovers were like tractors. And Unimog was a tractor. I can't think, you know, this is before Blazers, this is before, you know, the Toyotas. This predates all those cars. And you know, the first Suburbans and Blazers and international Travelals and so on, well, those are in the 60s. This is in the 40s. So I think it's a really cool piece of history, especially when you look at what Jeeps come today. Like, this would be the grandfather of a Jeep Grand Wagoneer, in my opinion. Okay, so anyway, it's a neat car. In the collector car world, it's a little bit lost. They don't bring especially big money, even though they made them in relatively small quantities, which normally props up the value. So it's an interesting buy, I think, because it's a significant vehicle. It's made in low production numbers. Not that many nice ones survive, and yet the cost to purchase it is still pretty reasonable. So in my mind, this is a classic car that's a buy. It has social significance. It has its place in the, you know, the automotive history. It's a significant vehicle. It is, like I said, the sort of the grandfather of the modern SUVs, and unlike just about every other collectible, it hasn't really shot up in value. You know, the prices, I mean, it's climbed a little bit, but the prices are, you know, more or less where they were for the last 20 years. It's gone up a little bit, but it hasn't doubled or tripled in value. And so oftentimes I get asked by my clients, well, you know, what's the next big thing? You know, like, I wish I bought an air-cooled 911. I wish I bought a this or that. And they're looking for the next collectible. And to that, I would say, well, you need desirability. You need, you know, social history. You need significance in the market. And you need rarity. And I think that this car has all of those things. Okay. All right, so enough about the WILLYS Jeepster. What about this particular vehicle? Okay, so this is a guy that I've known for, well, 25 years, something like that, and who's about my age. He's in his 50s. It was his first car. Like, he bought this car when he was like 18, and this was his all-weather, all year round cool car for an 18-year-old guy. He drove it for a while, and then he had it restored. You know, then he bought other cars and didn't drive it very much. And then finally, you know, the thing was just parked. And it's been parked for 20 years. We've taken the car out of storage. We've run it through the shop. We've changed all the fluids. We've got the car running and driving, and it runs and drives well, and we've recommissioned it for road use now. So I mean, there's still, you know, a few little things that should be done to it, a few little details, mostly cosmetics, but it's, you know, it's running and driving and ready to go. Okay, it's an older restoration. It was a good restoration in the day. You know, it's showing signs of wear. You know, there's places on it where the paint is bubbling. The car has a light skimming of filler. It's not full of Bondo, but you know, it does have filler. After 20 years, the solvents in the filler dry out, and then they crack. And then when they crack, you know, you can see, you know, little bits of moisture getting in there, and it's starting to rust. So there's, I mean, multiple places. You can see a little bit of bubbling coming through on the fender. And maybe I should just start in the quarter and just go through the whole thing. So we've seen the hood. The rest of the hood panel looks good. We have this cowl vent here. We've got a crack there. We've got some light rust there. These washers just haven't been fitted. We can see a little bit of cracking under the strip there on the fender. Is decent. A little bit of cracking there. On the door, it's straight. A couple cracks. Another crack there. On the rear fender, again, where the paint has an acute angle, it's kind of likely to crack. I wouldn't say the chassis is that stiff, so the chassis flexes a little bit, and then the paint starts cracking. Rear of the car looks good. A little bit of surface rust on the wheel there. Most of that will polish off. And we've got a new top with clear windows. Another little bit of cracking. Again, that's throughout the car, okay? So just about every panel has evidence of that. But there's nothing that's really major. You know, you can decide whether you want to address some of those issues or not. I think you might as well just leave it. You know, unless you get up within a few feet, you're not going to notice it. The top, like I said, is brand new. We've got clear windows all around. The interior is all redone. We have new upholstery throughout. You know, there's the original wheel and turn indicators. The dash is nice. It's all been repainted. It's got carpet in the back. The hood frame's been painted or powder coated. You know, there's some of the pieces are left original. Some of the chrome has some light pitting in it, as you can see. But overall, you know, very decent. Okay, so very, very nicely done interior. It's vinyl, again, new carpet. Underneath the car, it looks to me like the body's been off this car. I think I can say that. And then the chassis has been painted and is rust-free. So underneath the car, it's not rusty. It doesn't leak. It's pretty dry, and you know, the chassis has all been redone. So try to get that shot there. Suspension's tight. The steering's a little bit funny. I think because we have these modern, wider wheels, so I'm not sure the geometry's quite right with these wide tires, and the tires are 20 years old, so that would be something I'd probably change and put it back to its correct width. And also they rub a little bit at full lock, so that's one thing I do to the car. You know, you can, after 20 years, you can see some dry cracking, but everything else underneath looks pretty good. I mean, you know, it's a decent driver quality restoration in period that's aged reasonably well, but that's 20 years old. It's like, again, looks, you know, it's only until you get to 2 feet away that you start noticing the problems. So I'll show you the engine. Okay, so it's happily purring away. There's no obvious leaks. You know, the rubber all looks good, but it is 20 years old. It's greased. It's ready to go. We can see, you know, The body's been off the car. It's been sandblasted. It's been painted. You can see the firewall's been refinished, as has the engine bay, and you can see that all the wiring is new. 6-volt battery system, and we can see nothing extraordinary about the engine. And then if we go in the cabin, let's just look at the instruments here. So it's been idling here for a good 30 minutes, and it's not overheating. It's charging properly. You've got about looks like about 18 psi at idle, hot idle, and then if I increase the RPMs, we go to, I don't want to rev it too higher, but you go to 20 psi. Okay. So all that works properly. The important stuff. It's cool. It runs smooth. Doesn't smoke. And a happy old car. Okay, and now I will attempt to do a driving video, which isn't the easiest thing in the world with a 1940s car, 3 on the tree, and videotaping it. But reverse is toward you and up. So I'll just demonstrate that. And well, let's put the handbrake off first. Okay, and then we're happily going in reverse without any strange noises. Okay, so first gear, let the clutch slip out a little bit. And we'll just pull up to this light here. Brakes are good, it stops straight. Okay. Second gear, no grinding at all. I'm astonished how quiet the transmission is in this car. I don't expect that in 1940s cars. Okay, that's second and third. Must be up here. Oh, that was first. All right, well, that's good synchros. Obviously, I'll have to take a while to learn how to drive a 3 on the tree, and there's no markings. But I hope I've demonstrated that. And we've got good oil pressure, we've got good water temperature, we've got good drive line, we've got a quiet engine and gearbox, decent power. It can keep up with traffic. Okay, so with that, I'll sum it up. I think it's an important car. I think it has a interesting history. I think it is, like I said, one of the first SUVs, to call it that. We have an older restoration showing some cracking on the body, but otherwise looks as good as it did the day after it was restored. And we have, what still is an affordable classic that's usable, fun to drive, looks cool. You could have fun with this car. It's not going to require a lot to service, and it's just a great usable classic. So with that, Lromanosky from Calgary, Canada.